All right, we're getting breaking news right now. What we are getting to hear, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi will now be leaving for the United States on the 25th. Modi has advanced his US visit by a day. He was earlier slated to leave for the United States on the 26th of this month. The final program is being worked out and will be announced tomorrow. Former Army Chief and Union Minister General V.K. Singh will be accompanying the Prime Minister. Some young MPs will also be a part of the delegation. But the news that we're essentially breaking as of now, Narendra Modi will now be leaving a day in advance. He'll be leaving on the 25th for the United States and not the 26th. The reason, we are told, is logistical reasons, because he needs to refuel. His aircraft will need to refuel at Germany, and that is the reason being given to push forward his date of leaving. All right, I'd like to cut across at this point of time. Rahul Kamal, managing editor, joins us from Times Square, New York. He's with us live right now. Rahul, just days left before the Indian Prime Minister embarks on his charm offensive where America is concerned, and America pretty much laying out the red carpet.
Absolutely, Preeti. Morning. It's a very breezy morning in New York. The sun playing hide and seek, but the excitement is palpable. I've been to New York with a couple of past prime ministers, and always it used to be a story of regret, of remorse, or what could be the India story. This time though, things are different. The Indian American community is supercharged and waiting to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Never before have I seen such high levels of enthusiasm and excitement amongst every member of the Indian community. They're now viewing India with far more optimism, far more hope than ever before. Narendra Modi, for these Indian Americans, make no mistake, is a rock star, as big as any pop rock star in the world. And from what we've been able to gather by speaking to organizers who are putting the Madison Square Garden event together, 20,000 seats have already been sold out. Virtually every Indian American wants to see if he can get his toe in to Madison Square Garden come 9 a.m. on the 28th of September. There are people flying in from the East Coast. There are people flying in from the Caribbean. That's the level of excitement. They want to see the man who they believe is Moses, the man who they believe can carry India into the future. In India, after about 4 months of Modi Sarkar, opinion a bit divided on how effective he's been. But here, the excitement just continues to build with every passing hour, Preeti.
Rahul, take us through on what's planned at that public engagement at Madison Square. We believe he's going to be talking, he's going to be addressing the crowd on a rotating stage. What else are you picking up?
Madison Square Garden is where the biggest fights happen. Madison Square Garden is where the biggest rock concerts happen. And there will be a political rock concert, Preeti, of the sort the world has never seen. I've been speaking to several people here in New York to find out if there's been an instance in the past when an English leader, a Japanese leader, a Chinese leader, or a German leader has asked for Madison Square Garden. This is, now remember, in India we're used to seeing rallies which have, say, 1 lakh, 2 lakh, in some cases even 5 lakh people. But in the United States, most political campaigning involves far smaller crowds, except for the big conventions where you have about 5, 10, 15,000 people. Usually you don't see huge rallies of the sorts that you see in India. It's more televised. But you will see on the 28th of September, at the very least, 20,000 people chanting Modi, Modi at Madison Square Garden. That's the level of excitement, and that's, frankly, because America is a democracy like India and understands people power more than anything else, Modi and the BJP is hoping to send a strong message that this is a man who has the backing of his entire nation. And on the back of that big speech, he will be traveling to Washington the next day for his meeting with President Obama, who at this time is entering, unfortunately, the lame duck part of his presidency. The last couple of years in power, when his effective power and authority is not quite the same that he had on day one. So that's just a bit of a niggle. But given the fact that there's also the acrimony of the visa that was denied, there's a lot of emotion, not just Modi's emotions, mind you, emotions of the Indian American community, most of whom are devoted fans of the BJP. Remember, the overseas friends of BJP finds his biggest captive ground here in the United States, and they're now waiting to congratulate their rock star. In fact, so much so, Preeti, that there's a major scramble on to take credit for what is already being called a super hit visit. So much so that people in the BJP top brass in Delhi are having to struggle late into the night trying to control the very excited Indian American community members.
You know, Rahul, the visit to Japan, then playing a gracious host to China right here in India, and now the visit to America. You know, Narendra Modi, body language-wise, the way he's been, he's pretty much got his he's walking that tightrope of diplomacy quite finely. And if you look at it, the American itinerary quite astutely crafted. He's going to be visiting Ground Zero. He's doing the right things, at least on paper till now.
Oh, absolutely. And if you see very smartly, the Modi PR machine has planned every single event between 7 a.m. and 11 a.m. New York time, which essentially translates into prime time India. So essentially, while he'll be at the 9/11 memorial, when he'll be speaking at Madison Square Garden, the idea is to send a message back home. Remember, in the United States, attention at this time is divided because you've got the UNGA happening. Virtually all the world's leaders are over here. President Obama, because of the problems in Syria, apart from having to host so many people, is also tied up. So a lot of this posturing is to ensure that the message goes home, that this is a man who's a global statesman, and every event is orchestrated to ensure that all our viewers will be watching this live on TV whenever Modi does anything in the United States.
You know, and Rahul, okay, this is what maybe Narendra Modi's PR machinery would want to project. But this visit, of course, being viewed with euphoria, is also viewed with a fair bit of cautious optimism, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Please understand that Japan and China are not the United States. In Japan, if you've got the Prime Minister on board, in China, if you've got the President on board, life is easier. It's more of a one-window authority than in the United States, where Modi needs to convince every single boardroom in every single company. Gaurav Samant is speaking about how Modi's big focus is on invest in India, make in India. But President Obama can't wave a wand and ask American companies to start investing. The last few years, frankly, have been disastrous from the perspective of American companies. The civil liabilities, nuclear liabilities bill didn't pan out in the way that they would have wanted. Investments have dried up. It's very difficult for American companies to invest in India because of regulatory problems. They had for a long time got disinterested in the India story. Even now we're seeing FII investment. So we're seeing investment into the equity markets in India, but we're not seeing real FDI come in, where people put their money in the India story on the ground, not just in equities, but on the ground in real investment, greenfield, brownfield projects. That's not happening. And Modi needs to reach out to every single American boardroom to try and convince them. At this time, there is some ambiguity over whether or not a CEO's delegation will travel with him. Like was the case with Japan, several CEOs were sounded out. They're very excited about being a part of the Prime Minister's delegation. They haven't yet received clarity from the Prime Minister's office yet on whether they're on board or not. So there's some ambiguity there about whether or not there will be a big CEO's delegation coming. But here, he has to play salesman Modi. He has to convince American investors that India has changed and they should come back and invest. We don't know whether he'll succeed or not, but he's definitely whipping up a charm offensive.
And that's the reason why, Rahul, he's starting his visit with a breakfast, meeting with the top CEOs of the country, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. There's a big US-IBC, the US-India Business Council delegation that will be meeting Prime Minister Modi. There are several one-on-one meetings with American leaders scheduled as well. He'll be having breakfast with American. He understands the importance of convincing these American leaders, these American business leaders, to come back and invest in India. But mind you, they've burnt their fingers. They've tried to invest in India. They found it very difficult to do so. Now, Prime Minister Modi needs to reassure them. The only thing going in his favor really is his Gujarat track record. Speak to any American investor, he'll say it's much easier to do investment and business with Gujarat than it is elsewhere. If using that track record, he can convince these American companies to come back and invest in India, then of course it will be successful. Remember, India has greater affinity because of sheer number of Indian Americans here with the United States than with probably any other country. This is possibly the most high profile, the most hyped visit that Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be embarking on. Right from the moment he steps down at JFK to the moment he takes off from Washington, every single move will be marked not just in India, but also here in the US media.
You know, Rahul, ever since you've landed, what kind of reactions are you picking up, from the people in New York? Because we do know, everybody wants to see him. There's this massive Gujarati community which is flying in from across America to Madison Square, that public engagement. But what is the perception of Narendra Modi to the common person in New York on the streets there?
He epitomizes the Indian dream. Several of these Gujaratis, Punjabis have come from very simple backgrounds and have gone on to make massive fortunes for themselves here in Manhattan, at Jackson Heights, in New Jersey, all across New York and the United States. For them, Modi is the epitome of achievement. The fact that he can go from being a chaiwala to being Prime Minister really gives them faith about the India story.
What kind of press is he getting?
Mind you, I think... Well, frankly, as far as the American press is concerned, they're rather disinterested. And the reason for that, really, is that there's so much happening in New York at this time with the big UNGA leaders from virtually every country landing over here. There's massive entourages, big traffic jams also expected over the next few days. So American press attention is frankly not as much as the relentless, breathless coverage he's getting on Indian TV.
Right.
But he's making a big splash, mostly amongst the Indian-American community, and through that, ensuring that Washington notices as well that here's a man who's got the backing of 1.2 billion riding behind him.
All right, appreciate you joining us. Have a good day, Rahul. Rahul Kanwal reporting this morning in New York from Times Square. Trust headlines today to cover every opportunity to get you all the reactions coming in from New York on this epic visit by the Indian Prime Minister. Rahul Kanwal, Gaurav Sawant and our consulting editor Rajdeep Sardesai would be getting us the very latest. With that, we're going to slip into